This is Misfortune Radio with New York Times best-selling author and your host, Doug Andrew.
If you don't know who Milton Friedman is, he was called the economist of the century by Fortune magazine. In fact, Newsweek said Milton Friedman is one of the nation's outstanding economists, distinguished for remarkable analytical powers and technical virtuosity. He is unfailingly enlightening, independent, courageous, penetrating, and above all, stimulating. Do you know that Milton Friedman wrote a book called Capitalism and Freedom back in the 60s? Now, listen to this because what does this really mean to us today? He wrote this in the 1960s, and he said, the idea may be accepted by none, but the government programs undertaken in its name, like some of those intended to prime the pump, just like we've been doing the last couple of years with this economic stimulus, are still with us and indeed account for ever-growing government expenditures. Now, that was in the 1960s. He said, when private expenditures decline for any reason, it is said governmental expenditures should rise to keep total expenditures stable. Conversely, when private expenditures rise, governmental expenditures should decline. Unfortunately, the balance wheel is unbalanced. Each recession, however minor, sends a shudder through politically sensitive legislators and administrators with their ever-present fear that perhaps it is the harbinger of another 1929 to 1933 depression. So they hasten to enact federal spending programs of one kind or another. Many of the programs do not, in fact, come into effect until after the recession has passed. Hence, insofar as they do affect total expenditures, they tend to exacerbate the succeeding expansion rather than to mitigate the recession. The haste with which spending programs are approved is not matched by an equal haste to repeal them or to eliminate others when the recession is past and expansion is underway. On the contrary, it is then argued that a healthy expansion must not be jeopardized by cuts in governmental expenditures, which is what we need right now. The chief harm done by the balance wheel theory is therefore not that it has failed to maybe offset recessions, which it has in times, and not that it has introduced an inflationary bias into governmental policy, which it has also done, but that it has continuously fostered an expansion in the range of governmental activities at the federal level and prevented a reduction in the burden of federal taxes. The door, in other words, swings wider and wider. That is what Milton Friedman said, one of the century's greatest economists back in the 1960s. If he could have seen into the future where we're at right now, what does that mean for us today? Even if this new, restructured, new-look Congress stops or slows down the runaway spending that the Obama administration and Congress has been guilty of the last 2 years, we are left with tough economic decisions. And we are nearly $5 trillion further in debt than we were in 2007 when Nancy Pelosi vowed no new deficit spending.
This is Misfortune Radio with Doug Andrew.